Mr. Hinojosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly oppose the substitute and the effort here being made by the folks on the other side of the aisle, Local Funding Flexibility Act. And the reason I do is that when I hear about the 20 years of 1945 to 1965, I lived in schools during that time. I remember going to sign up to go to a school in a rural elementary school that was called the Mexican school. All Mexican children. Yet my home was only 2 blocks from a red brick elementary school. And it had a lot of school board members, just like my friend Dr. Rowe described his, caring for the community and caring for the students. They kept us segregated, and during those 20 years, what occurred is that the GI Bill was introduced, and our returning veterans were able to go to college, and that then kicked us into one of the most prosperous periods of our history, of our country's history. But the elementary schools were still segregated, and I was one of those victims. Fortunately, my father and mother moved us from that little community and went to one where I could sit in classrooms with white Anglo children, students. And I think that in conversations that I've had with Congressman Buck McKeon, who came into my area and witnessed all this, will agree with me that it would be shameful to allow that this Modernization and Improvement Act would take away monies that were put in here back in 1965 to try to close the gap. And I saw it in our children now as an adult, how our area, which was between 40 and 50% below the national poverty level at one time, not now, and that our schools are so much better, where we have elementary schools that are sending children to high schools that we call magnet high schools. In my area, 4 of them listed amongst the top 100 best high schools in the whole country, with 80% of them being Mexican-American children. Many from migrant families, working families. And it's because of Title I and other programs that we are trying to say, let's give these superintendents who know the best and the school board members who know the best on what to do with all this federal money. Ladies and gentlemen, it will not work. It will set us back. And I'm speaking from experience. Mr. Hunter, I heard what you said, but it doesn't work that way. If you were in my shoes, if you lived in Deep South Texas and in regions of the country similar to it, you would have to say, do not touch this money. Use it in the ways that we can close the gap, because there is no doubt that the ethnic communities, be they Hispanic or African American or Asian American, are the growing populations and families, and we must educate them so that we can have leaders for local and county and state and federal offices.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will yield.
I'm only 34 years old, not from the Deep South. Was born in 1976, grew up in San Diego. The majority of classes that I took, I was the minority as a white Anglo student, mostly Hispanic students in my area with me. If this bill did what you're talking about, segregation, we would vote no too. But it doesn't. This is not going to encourage segregation, and this is not going to allow us to violate current law.
I reclaim my time. I am not saying that it will cause segregation, because it won't allow it. The Supreme Court said we won't allow it when you talk about Brown versus Board. I'm talking about investing money like we do right here in D.C. and in Virginia and in Maryland, and the amount that we spend in money in elementary schools for students versus other regions of the country that I described. We have to close the gap, and this kind of money should not be taken away from those programs and given to those who say that our legislature cut us back, so we're going to take money from the poor and these programs and fill in the gap. With that, I yield back.